In 2025, the world feels faster than ever. Everything seems to move at the speed of light. Messages delivered instantly, breaking news flooding our screens every second, and digital platforms competing for our attention every waking moment. The question is no longer whether we are connected but whether we are still connected to ourselves. We now live in a world where artificial intelligence manages our calendars, algorithms decide what we see, and smart devices are embedded in our homes, cars, and even our bodies. Life in the digital age offers more convenience, information, and efficiency than any previous generation could have imagined. Yet, paradoxically, many of us feel more distracted, overwhelmed, and disconnected than ever before. The shift from analog to digital has fundamentally changed not just how we interact, but how we think, feel, and live. We are no longer just users of technology, are shaped by it. Our habits, relationships, attention spans, and even our sense of self are being influenced by the tools we use daily. This is why thriving in the digital age isn't about resisting technology, but about learning to live with it consciously, mindfully, and with purpose. To live well in this era, we must first understand the world we are in. The digital revolution is not just a technological shift, it is a psychological, emotional, and cultural one. It's changing how we define success, how we measure time, how we form connections, and how we relate to our own minds. The pressure to always be available, to constantly perform, and to compare our lives with curated online personas has become a silent epidemic of anxiety, stress, and loneliness. But it doesn't have to be this way. Just as technology evolves, so can we. We have the power to take a different path, one that embraces the benefits of modern tools without becoming slaves to them. We can learn to use technology in a way that supports our well-being, strengthens our relationships, and aligns with our deepest values. The first step is awareness. Awareness of how technology affects our daily habits. Awareness of how our attention is being pulled and manipulated. Awareness of how we feel after scrolling for an hour versus taking a quiet walk. When we become conscious of our patterns, we regain the ability to choose. And in that choice lies our power. Let's begin with the most fundamental aspect of digital well-being, our attention. In 2025, attention has become the most valuable commodity. Tech companies don't just sell products, they sell our focus. Every app, every notification, every vibration of the phone is designed to keep us engaged, to hijack our mental energy and redirect it toward their platform. This is not inherently Evelyn's business. But for us, the users, it means we must become guardians of our attention. Because attention determines everything: what we think about, how we feel, what we prioritize, and ultimately, the kind of life we live. If we let our attention be scattered, our lives will feel scattered. If we protect our attention, we begin to live with clarity. Living well in 2025 starts with reclaiming this attention. It means setting boundaries, turning off non-essential notifications, carving out tech-free mornings, and creating rituals that anchor us to the present moment. It also means training our minds through practices like meditation, journaling, or simply being still. In a world obsessed with speed, stillness becomes a revolutionary act. Next comes our relationship with time. The digital age has distorted our sense of time. We are always on, always reachable, and always rushing. Even our leisure is often filled with stimulation, binge-watching shows, scrolling through videos, responding to messages. Time slips through our fingers not because we lack it, but because we lack intentionality. Thriving means redefining time not as something to be maximized, but something to be experienced. We begin to ask, how do I want to feel at the end of my day? What moments truly matter to me? How can I create spaciousness in my schedule for rest, creativity, and connection? Instead of cramming our calendars with tasks, we start designing our days around energy. We observe when we feel most alive, and structure our work and rest accordingly. We allow gaps in our schedule not as inefficiency, but as sacred space. Because it's often in those quiet moments that clarity, insight, and peace arise. As we slow down and reclaim our time, we start noticing something profound. The quality of our life is determined not just by what we do, but by how present we are while doing it. Presence is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. In the face of constant pings and the pressure to multitask, simply focusing on one task, one person, or one moment becomes a radical choice. To thrive, we must cultivate presence deliberately. This might look like starting the day without screens, just a few minutes to breathe, stretch, reflect, or set intentions. It might mean practicing the art of monotasking, doing one thing at a time with full attention. Whether we're drinking tea, writing an email, or talking to a friend, we bring our full awareness to the experience. It's not about doing less, it's about experiencing more deeply. This presence naturally transforms how we relate to others. In a time when messages are instant but meaning can be lost in emojis and abbreviations, intentional communication becomes a vital skill. We learn to pause before replying, to ask questions, to listen with the goal of understanding, not just responding. We recognize that the health of our relationships depends less on frequency and more on depth. And that depth begins with our relationship to ourselves. Technology often pulls us outward toward comparison, performance, distraction. But thriving requires turning inward. It asks, what do I really value? What nourishes me? What drains me? Without this inner check-in, we risk living reactively, chasing updates, responding to everyone else's needs while losing touch with our own. That's why digital wellness isn't just about screen time, it's about self-knowledge. We begin to ask, when do I feel most alive? What are my digital triggers? How can I design my environment to support my best self? Sometimes this means curating our online spaces, unfollowing accounts that drain us, muting noise, choosing creators who uplift, educate, or inspire. We recognize that digital consumption, like food, shapes our emotional and mental state. Junk input leads to junk output. Conscious input, on the other hand, creates clarity. And then there is the body, the often neglected companion in the digital age. As we spend more time online, the body can become a forgotten landscape. Hours hunched over screens lead to tension, fatigue, and disconnection. But our bodies are wise. They carry signals of stress, of inspiration, of burnout. Listening to them is not indulgent, it's essential. Thriving means reconnecting with the body. This could mean short movement breaks during the day, gentle stretches, a walk without earbuds, or dancing to a favorite song. It could mean mindful eating, tasting food, chewing slowly, and honoring hunger cues. It means honoring rest not just at night, but during the day. Rest doesn't always mean sleep. Sometimes it means stillness, silence, a sigh. One of the most underrated digital wellness tools is the pause. The pause before opening the next tab. The pause before replying to a message. The pause before checking the news. In these small pauses, we insert choice. We begin to act, not react. We become authors of our experience. Equally important is our environment. In 2025, the lines between home, office, and leisure have blurred. Our bedrooms double as workspaces. Our breaks are often spent online. And while convenience is high, so is burnout. To live well, we must become intentional designers of our space. We ask, where can I create a zone that feels calming? Can I separate work from rest, even in a small apartment? Can I add beauty plant, a candle, natural light? Because our external environment mirrors our internal state. A cluttered desk can mean a cluttered mind. A quiet corner can become a sanctuary. Even in a hyper-connected world, nature remains one of the most powerful reset buttons. Whether it's a hike, a walk in the park, or simply watching the sky, time outdoors recalibrates us. It slows our heart rate, restores our nervous system, and offers perspective. In nature, there are no notifications. Only the present moment. Spending time offline is not about escapism, it's about restoration. We begin to see digital breaks not as deprivation, but as nourishment. Like a deep breath for the soul. And the more we do it, the more natural it feels. Over time, we develop an inner rhythm, a sense of when to plug in and when to unplug. This rhythm becomes especially important in our work life. In the past, work was a place. Now, it is a state. Remote work, flexible hours, and digital platforms have given us freedom but also responsibility. We must learn to manage our energy, not just our time. To know when to push and when to pause. Burnout is real, and it doesn't just come from doing too much, but from doing too little of what matters. Thriving in the digital age means aligning our work with our values. It means creating sustainable routines that include not just output, but reflection. It means measuring success not just by how much we do, but by how deeply we feel engaged and fulfilled. This is where purpose comes in. In a world full of noise, purpose acts like a compass. It reminds us of what matters. It helps us say no to the unnecessary and yes to what is aligned. Purpose doesn't have to be grand, it could be raising a kind child, creating art, helping others, or growing a garden. What matters is that it's meaningful to you. And when we live in alignment with that purpose, even technology becomes a tool, not a distraction. We use it to express, to connect, to create. We are no longer at the mercy of it. We become the architects of a digital life that is grounded, spacious, and full of meaning. In this new paradigm, intentionality is our superpower. With so many choices available, what to read, watch, follow, learn, buy, it becomes vital to pause and ask, is this aligned with who I want to become? We are no longer passive consumers but active curators of our experience. When we choose with intention, every click becomes a reflection of our values. This mindset also reshapes how we approach learning. In 2025, knowledge is no longer scarce, it's overflowing. With AI tutors, online academies, micro-credentials, and skill marketplaces, anyone can learn anything, anytime. But access alone is not enough. Thriving means learning how to learn, choosing depth over surface, process over speed, and relevance over novelty. We no longer chase every trend or headline. Instead, we ask, what skills will truly empower me in this season of life? What am I curious about? What learning feels energizing, not exhausting? Education becomes a journey of self-discovery, not just career preparation. And with every course, podcast, book, or mentorship, we invest not just in knowledge but in wisdom. Adaptability becomes a core muscle. In a rapidly evolving world, rigid identities crack. The job we trained for may disappear. The industry we trusted may transform. But when we stay flexible mentally, emotionally, creatively, we remain resilient. We learn to pivot with grace, to see change not as a threat, but as an invitation. And yet, amidst all this growth, there is also a growing need for boundaries, especially for our digital selves. When work lives on our laptops, connection lives in our phones, and entertainment is just a swipe away, the boundaries between life domains collapse. We begin to live in a perpetual state of partial attention, always alert, but rarely fully present. Boundaries, then, become a form of self-respect. A sacred no to what drains us, so we can say yes to what fuels us. Digital boundaries might look like no emails after 7 p.m. No screens in the bedroom. A protected morning routine before touching the phone. An hour each Sunday to go offline and reconnect with the real world. These boundaries are not about restriction theory, about freedom. Because every boundary we set is space reclaimed for something richer, deeper relationships, creative flow, rest, or reflection. It's where life returns to its natural rhythm. This also changes how we parent and relate to children. Kids growing up in 2025 are digital natives. They don't just use technology, they were born into it. Their world is one of virtual classrooms, AI homework help, multiplayer games, and YouTube idols. As adults, our role isn't to fear this world, but to help them navigate it with awareness and agency. We model the behavior we want them to learn. If we want them to value conversation over screen time, we start by putting our own devices down. If we want them to rest, we don't glorify overwork. If we want them to think critically, we help them question what they consume online. Parenting in this age is less about control and more about co-creation, helping children design a relationship with technology that supports their growth. And that growth isn't just academic, it's emotional. Emotional intelligence becomes a life skill more vital than ever. In a world of filters, bots, and curated personas, being able to name your feelings, sit with discomfort, and empathize with others is a superpower. Digital tools can't replace human connection, they can only enhance it when used wisely. So we teach our kids and ourselves to check in. What am I feeling right now? What might the other person be feeling? How can I express myself clearly and kindly? This emotional fluency builds stronger relationships, healthier communities, and more compassionate leadership. As we evolve emotionally, we also evolve socially. In 2025, many friendships begin and live entirely online. This isn't necessarily a problem, it's a shift. We learn that meaningful connection doesn't depend on geography, but on presence and sincerity. A voice note from across the world can carry more warmth than a distracted dinner. But online life also comes with its own challenges: cancel culture, outrage cycles, echo chambers. To thrive, we must develop discernment. Not every headline deserves our outrage. Not every comment needs a reply. We learn to pause, to zoom out, to ask, what's really going on here? Is this helping me grow, or just feeding the noise? Social media becomes a mirror. It reflects who we follow, what we share, and how we engage. Used consciously, it can be a tool for inspiration, advocacy, connection. Used unconsciously, it becomes a source of envy, anxiety, and polarization. So we return, again and again, to awareness. Am I using this platform, or is it using me? When we approach the digital world with mindfulness, we begin to create more than we consume. Instead of endlessly scrolling, we write, record, build, design, share. We stop waiting for permission and start offering our unique voice. In a sea of content, authenticity cuts through. People don't crave perfection, they crave truth. And in sharing our truth, we find purpose. We discover that thriving is not about being the most efficient, the most connected, or even the most successful. It's about living in alignment, knowing what matters, making choices that reflect that, and finding beauty in the slow, the small, the unseen. Because in the end, the digital age is not just about technology. It's about being human in the midst of it. As we root ourselves in awareness, we begin to experience something we might have been missing all along: peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of calm clarity amidst complexity. In the digital age, peace doesn't come automatically. It must be cultivated, protected, and chosen, sometimes moment by moment. Peace is not passive. It is active, something we build through the choices we make every day. The choice to take a deep breath before reacting. The choice to leave a conversation that drains our energy. The choice to close the laptop when we've reached our limit. Peace becomes a daily practice, a kind of internal hygiene for the soul. This peace is especially necessary when confronting the overwhelm of information that defines modern life. In 2025, we are exposed to more content in a single day than our ancestors encountered in a year. News, opinions, trends, updates, they flood our consciousness at all hours, often with no filter for accuracy, meaning, or relevance. And while access to knowledge is empowering, too much information without discernment becomes noise. It clouds our judgment. It overloads our nervous system. It makes everything feel urgent, even when nothing really is. To thrive, we must become curators, not just consumers. We learn to limit our intake, just as we do with food. Not every article needs to be read. Not every video needs to be watched. Not every thread needs to be followed. We begin to ask, is this useful? Is it kind? Is it true? Does it serve my current path? And if not, we let it go. Information without integration is just clutter. In this clearing of digital clutter, we rediscover space: mental, emotional, and even physical. Space is where creativity returns, where intuition speaks, where new ideas and clarity are born. In a world obsessed with productivity, space becomes sacred. From this space, we begin to reimagine success. In the old model, success was measured by accumulation: more tasks completed, more money earned, more followers gained. But this external model left many feeling empty, burned out, disconnected, and unfulfilled. In 2025, a new model is emerging. One that centers sustainability, fulfillment, and contribution. Success is now being defined as doing work that aligns with your values, maintaining energy and health across time, having time for your loved ones, feeling connected to a sense of purpose, living with joy, not just achievement. This is not about abandoning ambition but about rooting it in meaning. We stop chasing metrics and start chasing moments. The laughter of a child, the stillness of a sunrise, the quiet satisfaction after a day of focused, heart-aligned work. These are the new symbols of wealth. Of course, this requires a reorientation. Many of us have internalized the hustle mindset, the belief that more is better, that rest is laziness, that slowing down means falling behind. But in truth, the opposite is often more accurate. When we slow down, we speed up in the right direction. Slowing down allows us to choose consciously, not react impulsively. It allows us to notice patterns, make better decisions, and care for ourselves with compassion. It creates room for gratitude, for nuance, for wisdom. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that we are human beings, not human doings. We begin to design lives that honor natural rhythms. The rhythm of our energy, the rhythm of seasons, the rhythm of our body and breath. Some days will be productive. Others will be restful. Both are necessary. We let go of the tyranny of uniformity and embrace the beauty of balance. Technology, then, becomes a partner, not a master. It supports us in tracking our habits, learning new skills, connecting across distances, and automating what doesn't require our soul. But we are always at the helm. We decide when to engage, when to step back, when to listen to the whispers of the inner voice. That voice often gets drowned out in the digital world. It is quiet, intuitive, often inconvenient. It speaks through feelings, through dreams, through the subtle pull of curiosity. But when we listen, we are led not by algorithms, but by something far more ancient, our own inner knowing. This is what thriving truly means, to live from the inside out. To let our values guide our decisions. To let our energy guide our schedule. To let our heart guide our connections. In a world where so much pulls us outward, turning inward is the ultimate act of sovereignty. And from that inner place, we engage the world not as fragmented, distracted versions of ourselves but as whole, grounded, powerful beings. We show up to our work with focus. We show up to our relationships with presence. We show up to our challenges with resilience. We show up to our life fully awake. In doing so, we contribute something rare and needed, not just more content, but more consciousness. Not just more noise, but more truth. Not just more speed, but more soul. And this contribution ripples outward, impacting our families, our teams, our communities, and ultimately, the collective direction of humanity in the digital age. One of the most transformative shifts in this age is the move from passive consumption to active creation. In a digital world that constantly invites us to watch, scroll, and react, choosing to create even in small ways is a form of empowerment. It reminds us that we are not just receivers of the digital current, but also shapers of it. When we create, we re-engage with our agency. Whether it's writing a blog post, producing a video, sharing an insight, crafting a piece of music, or building a community around a cause, you reclaim our voice. Our energy shifts from reaction to intention, from comparison to expression. Creating doesn't always mean broadcasting to the world. Sometimes it's journaling in the quiet of the morning, taking photos for personal reflection, or building something that no one else will see. The act of creating is therapeutic in itself. It activates parts of us that consumption alone cannot reach. It's also one of the most powerful antidotes to the modern epidemic of comparison and inadequacy. When we're caught in endless scrolling, we often see only polished versions of other people's lives. This curated exposure can distort reality and feed the false narrative that we're falling behind. But when we shift our focus to creating living from the inside out, we break free from that illusion. Creation grounds us in authenticity. We are no longer trying to impress, we are trying to express. Our worth is no longer tied to likes or shares, but to the fulfillment we feel in giving form to something that matters. And from this place, even digital platforms become vehicles of meaning. This approach also transforms how we engage with rest. In the old paradigm, rest was what we earned after burnout. It was something reactive forced by exhaustion. But in a thriving digital life, rest becomes proactive. It is integrated into our daily rhythm, not reserved for collapse. Rest is not just the absence of doing. It is the presence of restoration. It comes in many forms: sleep, of course, but also solitude, nature, music, silence, slow conversation, laughter. Rest is what reconnects us to ourselves. It clears the static from our inner signal. And yet, for many, rest feels elusive. Guilt creeps in. The fear of missing out. The internalized voice that says, you should be doing more. But thriving means recognizing that rest is productive. Not in the corporate sense, but in the human sense. A well-rested mind is more creative. A regulated nervous system is more resilient. A peaceful body holds space for deeper joy. We begin to respect our energy as a finite resource. We notice what drains and what renews. We schedule recovery time just as intentionally as we schedule meetings. We prioritize sustainability over intensity. Because life is not a sprint. It's a rhythm. This rhythm naturally brings us into greater harmony with our body-acer relationship that many lose in the hypermental realm of digital living. We begin to ask, how does my body feel after hours online? What signals is it sending? What would it look like to move, stretch, breathe, or simply rest? We treat our bodies not as machines, but as intelligent ecosystems. We nourish them not with trends, but with listening. We move not to punish, but to express. We eat not just to fuel, but to connect to the earth, to culture, to family. In a digitized world, this reconnect ion with the body becomes revolutionary. This embodiment also deepens our presence with others. When we feel safe and whole in our own skin, we show up to our relationships with openness rather than defense. We listen not just with our ears, but with our hearts. We move beyond performance and into connection. In 2025, relationships may begin in DMs, Zoom calls, or online communities, but the essence of human connection remains the same. We all crave to be seen, heard, and known. We long for spaces where we can be fully ourselves. And we thrive when we both give and receive this kind of presence. To create such spaces, we must first cultivate emotional safety within ourselves and in our interactions. This means owning our triggers, naming our feelings, and communicating our needs with clarity. It means listening with empathy, not just to respond, but to understand. It means being willing to repair when disconnection occurs. These relational skills are no longer optional, they are essential. In a world where attention is fragmented and reactions are quick, the ability to pause, reflect, and speak from the heart becomes rare and precious. And when we practice these skills, our relationships deepen not despite technology, but through how we use it. Even in professional spaces, emotional intelligence is becoming the currency of leadership. As automation handles more tasks, what remains uniquely human is the ability to inspire, collaborate, and care. These are not soft skills, they are core skills. And they're cultivated not by reading more productivity hacks, but by doing the inner work. Inner work in the digital age means having the courage to slow down, to feel what we've been numbing, to confront the parts of ourselves we've been avoiding. It means building a relationship with silence, with solitude, with discomfort. It means healing in a hyperstimulated world. This healing is not linear. Some days will feel clear and strong. Others will feel messy and confusing. But with each breath of awareness, with each step toward alignment, we inch closer to a life that feels real, rooted not in performance, but in presence. And slowly, a new way of being emerges. One that is not frantic, but intentional. Not reactive, but rooted. Not performative, but profound. This is the essence of living well in the digital age. As this new way of being takes root, we begin to sense a quiet but powerful transformation, the emergence of true freedom. Not the shallow freedom to scroll endlessly, buy anything instantly, or respond to everything urgently, but the deeper freedom to choose what really matters. In a digital world designed to keep us engaged, real freedom lies in the ability to disengage consciously. To live well in 2025 means realizing that more access doesn't mean more fulfillment. That constant connection doesn't guarantee closeness. That more information doesn't always bring more wisdom. Instead, we find that fulfillment comes from clarity, presence, and purpose-driven engagement. Freedom is found when we're able to turn off distractions not out of fear or rejection, but because we are so anchored in what we value that the noise no longer holds power over us. This freedom is subtle. It's in the moment we choose to speak our truth instead of staying silent to conform. In the hour we spend walking without headphones, simply to reconnect with nature and ourselves. In the decision to rest when the world urges hustle. And it is through these small choices that we begin to reclaim our inner authority, the ability to guide our lives from within, rather than outsourcing our sense of direction to trends, algorithms, or social validation. We remember that no app knows us better than we know ourselves if we're willing to listen. Listening becomes a sacred act in this age. Listening not just to others, but to our inner voice, the quiet wisdom that emerges when we pause, reflect, and tune in. In a world of noise, this inner voice is easily drowned out. But when we create space for it through journaling, solitude, meditation, or intentional conversation, it begins to speak more clearly. Sometimes it says, slow down. Sometimes it says, try again. Sometimes it says, this path is no longer for you. And sometimes, It offers nothing more than stillness, and that is enough. From this stillness arises one of the most grounding qualities of a thriving life: gratitude. Gratitude is the great balancer. It softens urgency, widens perspective, and roots us in what is real. While the digital world often pulls us toward what we lack, what we haven't achieved, acquired, or become, gratitude draws us back to what we already have. Gratitude doesn't ignore pain or difficulty. Rather, it coexists with it. It acknowledges the full spectrum of experience and says, even here, something is worthy of thanks. It could be a breath, a lesson, a connection, a sunrise. These moments are always available but often overlooked in the rush. To cultivate gratitude in 2025 is to reclaim our attention from scarcity narratives. It is to say, I refuse to measure my life only by external progress. I choose to recognize the invisible blessings that nourish me every day. This practice isn't theoretical, it's transformational. Studies show that gratitude improves mental health, boosts immunity, enhances sleep, and strengthens relationships. But more than that, it brings us back to the heart. It reconnects us with what is alive, beautiful, and meaningful. And it's from this rooted place that we begin to redefine success on our own terms. No longer dictated by social media metrics, job titles, or societal expectations, our success becomes personal. It becomes intimate. It becomes soulful. We might ask ourselves, what does a successful day feel like to me? When do I feel most in flow, most authentic, most alive? What would it look like to design my life around those moments? These questions open the door to a new kind of ambition, one that is aligned, sustainable, and life-giving. We don't abandon goals, but we pursue them with integrity. We don't avoid effort, but we choose effort that feels purposeful. We let go of hustle as identity and embrace progress as practice. From this place, our digital life becomes an extension of our values, not a replacement for them. We use tools that support our growth. We build platforms that amplify our voice, not dilute it. We engage in communities that reflect our truth, not distort it. Every click becomes a conscious act. Every scroll, a potential moment of alignment, a reminder to pause and realign. And inevitably, this consciousness begins to affect how we consume not just information, but products, services, and experiences. In the past, consumption was reactive, habitual, even numbing. But in a thriving digital life, consumption becomes intentional. We begin to ask, do I need this? Does it support my well-being? Was it created ethically and sustainably? We no longer buy just for convenience, choose for consequence. We recognize that behind every product is a process. Behind every service, a system. And behind every purchase, a potential impact. This awareness doesn't paralyze us, it empowers us. We shift from unconscious consumers to mindful participants in the ecosystems we inhabit. This shift ripples into how we approach work and contribution. No longer satisfied with just making a living, many of us seek to make a difference. We want to know that what we do matters, that it uplifts, supports, or enriches others in some way. We don't want to work only for profit. We want to work for purpose. Thriving in 2025 means aligning our professional lives with our personal values. Whether we are entrepreneurs, freelancers, educators, creators, or employees, we seek meaning in our efforts. We don't separate who we are from what we do. We bring our whole selves to the table. This integration isn't always easy. It requires discernment, courage, and sometimes reinvention. But it also brings the deepest rewards: a sense of coherence, a life where the inner and outer worlds reflect each other, where fulfillment is not a weekend luxury but a daily experience. And as we contribute more consciously, we begin to think not just about success, but about legacy. What are we leaving behind, not just in possessions, but in energy, in influence, in impact? How are we shaping the digital culture that future generations will inherit? Legacy, in this context, is not about fame or monuments. It's about footprints of kindness, integrity, and vision. It's the email that lifted someone's spirit, the idea that sparked someone's growth, the choice to pause instead of react, the work that planted a seed of change. In this way, every action becomes an act of creation. Every interaction, a thread in the tapestry of collective consciousness. And every moment, an opportunity to live with depth, truth, and love. As our awareness deepens, we begin to realize that thriving is not just about personal well-being, it is also about how we relate to the world around us. Every choice we make, every habit we reinforce, every relationship we nurture becomes part of a broader ecosystem. And in 2025, the lines between the personal and the collective are more porous than ever. The way we set boundaries, for example, is not only an act of self-respect, it is an act of cultural rebellion. In an era where burnout is normalized and always available is expected, saying no becomes revolutionary. It signals to others that life is more than output. That presence is more valuable than productivity. That health is more important than hustle. We begin to design our boundaries not from guilt, but from wisdom. We recognize that when we overextend, everyone suffers. Our creativity dims, our joy fades, our relationships grow strained. Boundaries become bridges to sustainability. They are not walls, they are agreements. Sacred contracts we make with ourselves and others to honor what matters. This boundary work is especially important in the digital space, where physical limits are blurred. Work emails arrive during dinner. Group chats ping at midnight. The scroll is infinite. Without intentional design, our attention becomes fragmented, our nervous systems overstimulated. So we choose differently. We create tech-free evenings. We designate one day a week without screens. We communicate clearly with colleagues about working hours. We install apps that support our limits, not exploit them. We build in friction where there was once impulsivity. And through this, we rediscover something precious: agency. We no longer feel like victims of our devices. We are not trapped by technology. We are in relationship with it, and like all relationships, it requires balance, boundaries, and care. This balance spills into our relationships with others. In 2025, many of our connections happen online through texts, calls, video chats, and social platforms. While these tools can bridge distance and time zones, they can also foster misunderstanding, superficiality, and emotional fatigue if not used consciously. We learn that true intimacy requires intentional presence. It cannot be rushed. It needs pauses, silence, vulnerability. In our digital conversations, we begin to slow down, to ask deeper questions, to listen without multitasking, to send voice messages instead of emojis, to say "I'm thinking of you" without needing a reply. We also learn to recognize the seasonality of relationships. Not every connection is meant to last forever. Some serve a purpose for a moment, then naturally fade. Others deepen slowly over years. In the digital world, where following and unfollowing are daily acts, we practice grace. We let go without resentment. We stay open to new energy. Thriving also means recognizing when to step away from toxic dynamics, from performative friendships, from communities that no longer align with our values. This stepping away is not failure. It is growth. It is making space for what truly resonates. And in that space, something beautiful happens. We become magnetic to the right people. People who meet us in our truth. People who challenge and support us. People who respect our energy. These are not accidental encounters. They are the result of inner alignment. As we become more ourselves, we naturally attract what reflects our evolution. And so, relationships become less about quantity and more about quality. We no longer seek to be liked by everyone. We seek to be understood by a few. We don't need 1,000 followers, we need a handful of soul-aligned connections. We learn to water those relationships, to invest in them with presence, patience, and love. This love extends to our communities. Whether online or offline, we begin to see our place in a larger collective web. We recognize that our healing supports others, that our courage gives permission, that our honesty creates space. We begin to live not just for ourselves, but for something greater. Sometimes that greater is a family. Sometimes it's a cause. Sometimes it's a message, a project, a piece of art. What matters is not the scale but the sincerity. Contribution does not have to be grand to be meaningful. A single act of kindness can shift a life. A single story can open a heart. And in this spirit of contribution, we explore how to leave things better than we found them. Whether it's our digital footprint, our workspace, or our relationships, we infuse our presence with care. We make conscious choices. We clean up after ourselves. We take responsibility for the energy we bring. This is how we restore dignity to the digital world, not by abandoning it, but by inhabiting it differently. We become anchors of integrity in a sea of noise, beacons of depth in a culture of speed. We choose to embody the very things we seek: empathy, awareness, honesty, courage. In doing so, we become leaders not by title, but by example. And leadership in the digital age is not about control or charisma. It is about consistency, coherence, and compassion. It is about walking your talk, about being the same person on screen and off, about choosing love over fear, again and again. And slowly, the world around us shifts. Not dramatically, but organically. One conversation at a time. One boundary at a time. One moment of presence at a time. Because in the end, this is how we change culture, not by force, but by frequency. By becoming living invitations to a different way. A slower way. A truer way. A way of thriving. The deeper we walk this path of intentional living, the more we begin to feel a shift not just in our habits, but in our identity. We no longer see ourselves as passive participants in the world, reacting to circumstances or chasing fleeting rewards. We begin to recognize ourselves as creators of experience, sculptors of meaning, architects of our reality. This realization births a quiet revolution. A transformation not driven by force, but by frequency, the daily rhythm of choice, by the pattern of presence, by the courage to ask, again and again, what truly matters right now? In the digital age, this question is radical. Because the world is constantly answering it for us through algorithms, ads, trends, and headlines. It tells us what to want, what to fear, what to prioritize. But when we pause, step back, and listen inwardly, we realize our deepest needs are often far simpler than what the digital world offers. We need meaning. We need rest. We need connection. We need to feel seen, heard, and safe. We need space to grow, to feel, to stumble, to begin again. These are not algorithmic needs, they are human needs. And they remain unchanged, no matter how fast technology evolves. To thrive in 2025 means returning to these truths not by abandoning modernity, but by infusing it with humanity. We take what's useful from the digital world and discard what's extractive. We keep the tools that support our flourishing and release those that fragment our peace. This requires discernment. It requires ongoing self-inquiry. What nourished me last year might not serve me now. What energized me yesterday might drain me today. Thriving isn't status, it's a dance. A flow of noticing, adjusting, and honoring what is alive within us in each moment. In this fluidity, we become more attuned to our inner seasons. There are times for building, and times for resting. Times for sharing, and times for withdrawing. Times for structure, and times for surrender. When we stop resisting these cycles, we begin to live with more ease. Life stops feeling like a battle and begins to feel like a conversation. This conversation extends to our digital presence. We no longer post just to be seen but to connect meaningfully. We no longer engage to perform but to resonate. Our content reflects who we are, not who we think we should be. And in doing so, we give others permission to do the same. Slowly, we become part of a subtle cultural shift, a movement toward authenticity, toward slower growth, toward deeper roots, toward substance over spectacle. We begin to value relationships where silence is safe, work that uplifts others, ideas that take time to ripen, moments that don't need to be captured to be meaningful. We become less interested in being impressive and more interested in being real. This shift naturally affects how we approach goals. In a world that prizes milestones and metrics, we begin to redefine success as something quieter, more internal. A good day might be one where we stayed connected to ourselves, where we said no when we meant no, where we honored our limits, where we showed kindness especially when it was hard. We stop measuring our lives only by output and start honoring inner alignment. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition, it means rooting ambition in values. It means pursuing excellence without abandoning ourselves. It means growing from a place of joy, not from pressure or fear. From this place, we approach challenges differently. Setbacks no longer mean failure, they become feedback. Discomfort no longer means something's wrong, it often means we're expanding. And discomfort, when held with awareness, becomes a bridge to transformation. This is especially important in 2025, when the pace of change continues to accelerate. Technology will keep evolving. The world will keep shifting. External stability will remain elusive. But when we build inner stability through practices, values, and presence, we create an anchor amidst the storm. That anchor is ritual. Not in the religious sense necessarily, but in the personal sense, small, consistent acts that ground us. Morning stillness. Evening reflection. A daily walk. A weekly pause. A gratitude list. A breath before every meeting. Rituals remind us that even in chaos, we can create order. That even in uncertainty, we can choose presence. That even when everything changes, we still have power over how we meet the moment. These rituals don't have to be dramatic. In fact, their quietness is part of their strength. A cup of tea savored with attention. A device turned off during meals. A moment of stillness before opening the news. These micro-practices have macro impact. Over time, they rewire our nervous systems, reorient our attention, and reawaken our capacity for awe. Yes, or something increasingly rare in a world of constant exposure. But thriving means preserving our capacity to be moved, to be humbled by beauty, to be enchanted by simplicity, to be touched by music, art, laughter, kindness, to be fully alive in the smallness and vastness of the human experience. And this aliveness doesn't come from it comes from less noise, less urgency, less distraction. It comes from presence, from noticing what we already have, from remembering that life is not something we master, but something we meet, one breath at a time. As we deepen into this slower, more intentional way of living, something beautiful happens. We begin to trust ourselves again. In a culture that constantly sells answers through courses, content, or coaching, it's easy to forget that we already carry deep inner knowing. That within each of us exists a compass, waiting to be consulted. This inner compass grows louder when we stop outsourcing our decisions to the noise of the crowd. When we pause before clicking. When we breathe before replying. When we ask, what feels true for me in this moment? Slowly, we begin to trade external validation for internal clarity. That clarity doesn't always come with certainty, but it comes with peace. It says, even if this isn't perfect, it's aligned. It says, this path may be unfamiliar, but it's mine. And the more we honor that voice, the more confident, calm, and connected we become. This is the path of sovereignty, not as rebellion, but as quiet responsibility. We become the authors of our own lives, the architects of our habits, the guardians of our attention. We no longer live on autopilot. We live by design. Living by design in 2025 requires tools, yes, but more importantly, it requires discernment. There are endless systems, platforms, and gadgets promising to optimize our lives. And many of them truly help. But tools are only as effective as the intention behind their use. We begin to ask, is this helping me live better or just faster? Is this making me more connected or more distracted? Does this technology support my values or subtly undermine them? These questions empower us to engage with innovation wisely, to welcome the gifts of technology efficiency, access, connection while also remaining vigilant about its costs. We stop blindly adopting the latest tool and instead filter it through our values, our energy, and our desired way of life. Technology becomes a partner, not a dictator. We use it to simplify, not complicate. To enhance, not replace. To assist, not numb. Our relationship with it becomes conscious, respectful, and flexible. We adapt it to serve our life, not the other way around. This shift naturally leads us to consider not just our own thriving, but the thriving of the planet. Because our digital choices have ecological impact, cloud storage consumes energy, devices require mining and disposal, fast content accelerates fast consumption. Sustainability is no longer just about what we eat or wear, it's about how we live online. Thriving in the digital age means making eco-conscious tech choices. Choosing durable devices over disposable ones. Repairing before replacing. Using renewable-powered servers when possible. Being mindful of digital clutter, archiving instead of endlessly storing. Understanding that every email, every download, every photo in the cloud has a footprint. This is not about guilt, it's about awareness. About moving from what's easiest for me to what's kindest for all. And in doing so, we expand our definition of thriving. We include future generations. We include unseen workers. We include the soil, the oceans, the skies. In this way, our digital well-being becomes deeply interconnected with collective well-being. We are not isolated users, we are participants in vast systems. And when we act with care, even in small ways, we ripple healing into those systems. Healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes, it looks like choosing rest instead of rushing. Like choosing silence over commentary. Like choosing depth over dopamine. Like walking away from what is popular to walk toward what is right for you. And this is the essence of self-leadership. In a world of constant pull, it is the practice of returning to your center. Of knowing your needs. Of choosing your energy. Of deciding, moment by moment, what kind of life you are creating. Self-leadership means we stop waiting to be saved, be the next update, the next solution, the next milestone. Instead, we realize, the life we seek is built from the inside out. No tool can give us peace if our nervous system is fried. No strategy can create purpose if we don't know what we care about. No app can substitute for human presence. So we turn inward. We reclaim rituals of reflection. We ask better questions. We listen with humility. We honor our rhythms. And we begin to trust the slow process of transformation. This slow process is sacred. It is not linear, flashy, or easily measurable. But it is powerful. Over time, it rewires not just our habits, but our identity. We stop seeing ourselves as fragmented digital consumers. We become integrated human beings, creative, calm, conscious. And from this integrated state, we begin to give differently. We create from fullness. We relate from compassion. We work from inspiration. We lead from alignment. We move through the world not trying to prove or chase, but simply to contribute, to serve, to shine. This is the path of the modern mystic, the grounded visionary, the digital human who is both rooted and reaching, anchored in the present, but open to the possibilities of the future. And that future is not written in code. It is written in consciousness. In every decision you make, every word you share, every habit you build, every moment you reclaim from noise and return to presence. Because ultimately, thriving in 2025 is not a destination. It is a devotion. A devotion to depth. A devotion to clarity. A devotion to living a life that feels true. As this devotion deepens, it begins to color every aspect of our lives, not through dramatic reinvention, but through the consistency of small, conscious choices. It's in the way we breathe before speaking, the way we look into someone's eyes instead of down at our screen, the way we respond instead of react, the way we hold space for others and for ourselves. We begin to realize that presence is not a one-time achievement, it is a practice, renewed moment by moment. It is the choice to meet life as it is, not as we wish it would be. To welcome both the joy and the mess with equal softness. To inhabit this moment fully, without rushing to the next. This presence becomes our superpower. It allows us to listen without distraction, to work with full attention, to rest without guilt. In a world that demands fragmentation, presence is wholeness. And from that wholeness comes something rare and powerful: peaceful productivity. Peaceful productivity is not about doing less, it's about doing what matters, in a way that doesn't cost our well-being. It's about showing up to our tasks with clarity, focus, and heart. It's about choosing quality over quantity, depth over speed, essence over ego. In practice, this might look like planning fewer tasks, but doing them well. Taking mindful breaks that actually renew us. Saying no to tasks that don't align with our values. Creating, not just consuming. Ending the workday without checking back in just one more time. This kind of productivity feels different. It's not frantic or depleting. It's fulfilling. Because it comes from the inside out. It's rooted in rhythm, not pressure. And it's more sustainable, because it honors the human behind the task. In 2025, this kind of productivity is becoming essential. As more people work remotely or on hybrid schedules, self-management becomes the new leadership. We're no longer just showing up for a boss, we're showing up for ourselves. This requires structure, clarity, and self-trust. We begin to design workdays that work for us. Some of us rise early, while others come alive at night. Some thrive with clear routines, others with flowing blocks of time. There's no universal formula, only what works for your energy, your goals, your life. And when we give ourselves that permission to work with, not against, our natural flow unlocks something remarkable: creative sovereignty. We're no longer just executing tasks. We're shaping the canvas of our day. We're sculpting time into meaning. We're building a life, not just a resume. Of course, this doesn't mean every day is perfect. There will be days of distraction, of exhaustion, of resistance. But even then, we meet ourselves with compassion. We don't punish. We inquire. We ask, what do I need? What's out of alignment? What would bring ease? This compassion becomes the glue that holds our practice together. Without it, we fall into perfectionism, shame, and burnout. With it, we become resilient, adaptable, and kind. Compassion is not softness, it is strength that sustains. It also shapes how we care for our bodies, which remain our most honest source of feedback. When we tune in, our bodies tell us everything. When we're hungry, tired, overwhelmed, excited, unsafe. They are constantly speaking, but we must be willing to listen. Thriving in 2025 means building a partnership with the body. Not through rigid discipline or aesthetic goals, but through reverence. We ask not, how do I make my body look different? But, how do I help my body feel safe, nourished, and strong? This could mean movement that feels joyful instead of punishing. It could mean sleeping more, not less. Drinking water. Eating real food. Taking walks without tracking steps. Stretching. Breathing deeply. Unplugging when overstimulated. It could mean softness, stillness, slowness. These practices don't require expensive programs or fancy gadgets. They require presence. And they remind us that the body is not a problem to fix, it is a companion to walk with. When we care for the body, we naturally care for the mind. The two are inseparable. A well-rested body supports mental clarity. A nourished body supports emotional regulation. A grounded body supports spiritual depth. In turn, we care for the mind not by overthinking, but by giving it space. Space to reflect, to digest, to wander, to be quiet. We stop feeding it endless input, and instead offer it integration. We create time to process, to write, to feel. We also begin to notice the stories we tell ourselves, the inner dialogue that shapes our identity. Are we speaking to ourselves with judgment, or with love? Are we reinforcing limitation, or possibility? Are we narrating our life as a victim, or as a creator? Words are powerful, even the ones we never say aloud. So we begin to choose different ones. Instead of "I'm so behind," we say, "I'm moving at my pace." Instead of "I'm a mess," we say, "I'm growing through this." Instead of "I can't," we ask, "What's possible?" These inner shifts ripple outward. They change how we show up to others. We become less reactive, more responsive. Less rigid, more fluid. Less focused on image, more anchored in essence. And perhaps most importantly, we become more available for joy. Joy is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It restores us. It reconnects us to life. And it's available not just in peak moments, but in the mundane. A song that stirs the soul. A smile from a stranger. The smell of coffee. A good stretch. A belly laugh. A quiet evening. We stop postponing joy for someday. We invite it in now. We stop treating rest, celebration, and play as rewards and start treating them as essentials. Because in the end, a life well lived is not built on constant optimization. It's built on presence, purpose, and pleasure. It's built on moments that feel rich, not just efficient. On rhythms that feel human, not mechanical. On experiences that feel real, not curated. And when we build our days like this, moment by moment, with Karoo, are not just surviving the digital age. We are thriving. As we settle into this rhythm of presence, we begin to notice something we may have been taught to overlook: enoughness. In a culture driven by scarcity, comparison, and relentless striving, the radical idea that I have enough, I am enough, feels almost subversive. But this is where true thriving begins. Enoughness is not complacency, it's contentment with consciousness. It's the recognition that while growth is beautiful, we don't need to shame ourselves to improve. That ambition can coexist with acceptance. That we are worthy even as we evolve. In the digital age, where every scroll reveals someone with more success, more followers, more beauty, more productivity, practicing enoughness becomes an act of resistance. It's choosing to be grateful for what is, rather than always chasing what's next. It's deciding that inner peace is more valuable than outer performance. This shift in perspective liberates us. We begin to see that the pressure to constantly level up is not always aligned with our soul. Sometimes the real growth is not in doing more, but in doing differently. In moving with integrity instead of speed. In choosing alignment over achievement. This doesn't mean abandoning our goals. It means redefining success not as accumulation, but as congruence, and how we live on the outside matches what we value on the inside. We stop saying yes to things just because we can. We stop proving our worth through productivity. We let go of the idea that rest, joy, or stillness must be earned. And in this letting go, we create space for real fulfillment, not the fleeting dopamine hit of a like or comment, but the steady glow of knowing we are living in integrity. That integrity also extends to how we show up online. We begin to recognize that our digital presence is an extension of our energetic field. The tone of our posts, the intention behind our messages, the way we engage with others, it all carries weight. So we begin to ask, is what I'm sharing authentic? Does this uplift or just perform? Am I posting to connect, or to be seen? These questions don't shame us, they sharpen us. They help us align our online selves with our offline values. They encourage us to use the internet not as a stage, but as a platform for truth. Sometimes this means sharing vulnerably. Sometimes it means stepping back in silence. Sometimes it means supporting others quietly, without announcing it. There is no one right way to be online. But there is a difference between being performative and being present. Presence online feels grounded, calm, intentional. It invites connection, not competition. It leaves space for nuance, for humanity. And it's deeply needed in a world where noise often drowns out meaning. In this spirit, we begin to build digital sanctuaries, corners of the internet where honesty, creativity, and depth are welcomed. These spaces might be group chats, private communities, newsletters, or even solo journaling platforms. What matters is not the size, but the energy. Energy is what people remember, not just what you said, but how you made them feel. When we bring our full, authentic selves to the screen, others feel it. They are drawn not to perfection, but to presence. Not to the polished brand, but to the human heart behind it. This authenticity also transforms our creativity. No longer bound by metrics or algorithms, we create from joy, from curiosity, from love. We stop asking, will this go viral, and start asking, does this feel true? And in doing so, we unlock a kind of artistic freedom that's both healing and magnetic. We stop waiting for permission. We stop trying to please everyone. We follow the thread of inspiration, even when it leads to unknown territory. We experiment. We play. We make things not for approval, but for the sheer pleasure of expression. And when we create like this, we contribute to something greater, a digital culture that values depth over drama, that celebrates nuance, that welcomes diversity of thought, emotion, and experience. This culture doesn't demand perfection, it invites participation. It says, "Come as you are. Speak from the heart. Stay open. Stay curious." And when we engage from this place, we don't just consume, you connect. Connection in the digital age is complex. It's easy to confuse proximity with intimacy, frequency with depth. But true connection online or offline requires intention. It requires presence. It requires a willingness to go beyond the surface. So we start asking different questions. Instead of "What do you do?" we ask, "What lights you up?" Instead of "How's it going?" we ask, "What's been on your heart lately?" We risk awkwardness in service of authenticity. We also learn to listen not just to words, but to tone, silence, emotion. We stop multitasking when others are speaking. We put down the phone during meals. We treat attention as the sacred gift it is. Because to be truly seen and heard is one of the deepest human needs. And in offering that to others, we also give it to ourselves. We learn to sit with our own feelings, without distraction. To process instead of numb. To feel instead of scroll. We learn that emotional hygiene is just as important as physical hygiene. That mental clarity requires mental spaciousness. So we make space. Space to cry, to laugh, to not know. Space to be unproductive. Space to be alive. In that space, we find not just rest, but renewal. Renewal is not something we achieve, it is something we allow. It comes when we step out of chronic stimulation and into silence. When we stop managing, fixing, scrolling, achieving and simply be. Not because we are giving up, but because we are finally coming home. In 2025, the greatest luxury is not wealth or status, it is presence. To be where your feet are. To breathe without urgency. To savor a moment without turning it into content. This is the heartbeat of a thriving life. And yet, presence doesn't always come easily. The digital age trains us to escape discomfort quickly. A hard feeling? Scroll. An awkward pause? Check the phone. A moment of stillness? Fill it. We are conditioned to flee the now, even though the now is the only place where life actually happens. Thriving means learning to stay, to breathe through tension, to witness emotions, to listen to the body's signals, to allow boredom, grief, restlessness not as enemies to escape, but as invitations to return. We stop pathologizing discomfort and start seeing it as data. It's not something wrong with its information. A call for rest, change, connection, or reflection. When we meet discomfort with curiosity, it transforms. What once felt unbearable becomes a doorway to clarity. This practice of staying also changes how we hold time. We stop racing through our days and start moving with intention. We give ourselves permission to do one thing at a time. To eat slowly. To walk without headphones. To leave gaps in our schedule not as laziness, but as sacred pauses. These pauses are where life breathes. And when we live like this, something surprising happens. We get more done, not less. Because we are no longer leaking energy through distraction, overthinking, or overwhelm. We are focused. We are clear. We are present. And this presence is efficient in a way hustle never can be. But even beyond efficiency, what we gain is depth. Experiences become richer. Conversations more satisfying. Creativity more inspired. We stop skating on the surface of life and begin to sink into the sweetness underneath. And it is in this depth that we begin to encounter something timeless: wonder. Wonder is the quiet awe that arises when we really see. It's the softness in a child's voice, the color of the sky at dusk, the way your favorite song still gives you goosebumps. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's as simple as noticing how good it feels to stretch your body after sitting. Wonder reminds us that life is a miracle, even when it's messy. It pulls us out of loops of judgment, comparison, or scarcity and places us gently into the heart of the present. It doesn't ask for us to be perfect. It asks only that we pay attention. And when we start noticing more, we start appreciating more. We stop waiting for big moments and begin celebrating the small ones. A text from a friend. A quiet morning. A good laugh. A deep breath. A task completed with care. This appreciation becomes a form of spiritual wealth. It costs nothing, but it enriches everything. It changes the flavor of our days. It dissolves urgency. It reminds us that we are already living in what we once hoped for. But this shift only happens when we unplug regularly, intentionally, and with reverence. Digital Sabbath becomes not a trend, but a sacred rhythm. A day, even a few hours without screens, without performance, without input. Just time to return. To reset. To remember what matters. Some people spend this time in nature. Others in community. Others in solitude. What's important is not how we unplug but that we do. Not because the internet is bad, but because our inner world needs breathing room. And in that space, our creativity returns. Our sense of play. Our intuitive knowing. We begin to create not from pressure, but from pleasure. From presence. From alignment. And this creativity becomes contagious. We write more clearly. Speak more honestly. Lead more authentically. We bring our full selves to everything we touch, not just our careers, but our conversations, our homes, our habits. Our lives become a kind of art, not curated, but crafted. Not filtered, but felt. And this way of living changes not only how we experience the world, but how we are experienced by others. People begin to feel safer around us. Because we're not posturing. We're not rushing. We're not trying to be impressive. We are simply here, grounded, generous, open. This energy is rare in 2025. And therefore, it's powerful. Presence becomes our superpower. And in giving it, we give others permission to slow down too. To breathe. To remember. To feel. And so, without trying to lead, we begin to lead. Not through authority, but through embodiment. Not by telling others what to do, but by being an example of what's possible when we choose to live awake. We don't need to be influencers to influence. We only need to live aligned. Aligned with our truth. Aligned with our values. Aligned with our breath, our pace, our humanity. This alignment is not always comfortable. But it is always clarifying. It simplifies decisions. It filters out noise. It magnetizes what is meant for us. And the more we live from this place, the more magnetic our life becomes, not to the masses, necessarily, but to the right people, the right opportunities, the right energy. Because what we radiate is what we receive. And when we radiate presence, peace, and purpose, you receive a life that mirrors those things back to us. When we begin to live from this state of deep alignment, we notice a profound shift in our relationships, not just with people, but with life itself. The need to prove or impress softens. The compulsion to compete or compare dissolves. What remains is connection, raw, real, regenerative. This kind of connection cannot be rushed or forced. It emerges in the stillness between words, in the safety of being seen, in the mutual honoring of each other's essence. And it thrives in environments where authenticity is more important than polish, and where mutual growth is more important than ego. We start calling in relationships that nourish rather than deplete. Conversations that uplift rather than exhaust. Communities that empower rather than perform. Because as our internal world evolves, our external world begins to rearrange to match it. This is not Magicit's resonance. We attract what we are willing to embody. When we live with honesty, we attract honesty. When we lead with kindness, we attract kindness. When we radiate peace, we become a sanctuary for others who are tired of the noise. And from here, we no longer relate from fear of being judged, abandoned, or misunderstood. We relate from wholeness. We no longer need others to complete us, we invite them to join us. Not because we lack anything, but because connection, when free of neediness, becomes joy. We understand that not everyone is meant to walk with us forever, and that's okay. There's grace in letting go. There's beauty in the ebb and flow of closeness. Relationships evolve as we do. And when we stop clinging, we begin to love more freely. This freedom also extends to our work. We stop tolerating jobs, tasks, or partnerships that drain our life force. We stop chasing titles that mean nothing to our soul. We start creating, collaborating, and contributing in ways that feel resonant. Work becomes not just a source of income, but a vehicle for expression and service. Whether you're building a company, teaching a class, managing a household, or writing a poem, if it's aligned, it's sacred. And alignment doesn't mean e-sight, means meaning. There will still be challenges, but they feel worth facing. There will still be effort, but it's not soul-sucking. It's engaging, expansive, even energizing. We begin to organize our work around energy, not just time. We recognize when we're most creative, and protect that time. We allow for rest without guilt. We set boundaries that honor both our clients and our nervous system. We don't just chase more, we build better. From this place, we contribute in ways that feel regenerative, not extractive. We give, and are given to. We create systems that are ethical, humane, and sustainable, not just for others, but for ourselves. Because what good is a thriving career if your body is collapsing? What good is recognition if you feel hollow inside? What good is growth if it costs your peace? In 2025, true success is becoming more holistic. It's not just money in the bank, but rest in your spirit. It's not just status, but satisfaction. It's not just followers, but friendships. It's not just being known, it's being known for who you really are. And who you are is not a brand. not a niche, not a content calendar. Who you are is a living, breathing, evolving human being. Gloriously messy, radiantly imperfect, rooted in presence, capable of deep love. When you remember this, life stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like home. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop performing your identity. You stop pretending to be fine when you're not. You begin to live honestly. You begin to speak clearly. You begin to trust deeply. This trust is not naive, it is built on self-intimacy, on the slow, steady practice of listening inward, on the courage to feel all the feelings, on the wisdom of knowing you've survived what you once thought you couldn't. This is what makes you magnetic, not your aesthetics, not your credentials, not your productivity. What makes you magnetic is your depth, your presence, your integrity. Because in a world of noise, depth is rare. In a world of masks, authenticity is radiant. In a world of speed, stillness is a gift. And you, when you choose to live with intention, become that gift. Not because you're perfect, but because you're present. You walk into rooms differently. You hold space differently. You listen differently. You lead differently. And that difference is felt. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to prove your worth to be valued. You don't need to rush to stay relevant. You simply become the frequency you wish to experience. This frequency or energy, your clarity, your conscious presence is not just for you. It ripples outward. Every time you choose peace over panic, truth over trend, or silence over shouting, you're shaping the culture around you. Whether you realize it or not, you are always teaching others how to be how you live. This is what it means to lead in the digital age, not with control or charisma, but with consistency, coherence, and care. It starts with how you start your day. Do you reach for your phone before your breath? Or do you ground yourself in intention before entering the noise? These small rituals matter. They are not just personal habits, they are micropatterns of change. Because every habit is a vote. A vote for the world you want to live in. When you choose to unplug, to rest, to reflect, to create, you're voting for depth, for sustainability, for truth. And when enough people make these choices, the digital landscape itself begins to shift. Yes, the systems are vast. Yes, the algorithms are powerful. But so is your attention. So is your presence. So is your choice. And in 2025, choice is everything. You may not control the platform, but you choose what to consume. You choose what to post. You choose how to respond. You choose what to amplify. And these choices, repeated over time, become culture. We begin to recognize that we are not just users, we are citizens of the digital world. And just as we shape our physical environments with care, intention, and responsibility, so too must we shape our virtual ones. This means calling in accountability, but not canceling each other. It means creating dialogue, not just debate. It means elevating voices that often go unheard. It means standing for something, but not against each other. It means choosing to be builders, not just critics. We build by creating content that nourishes. We build by sharing stories that heal. We build by modeling boundaries, empathy, and clarity. We build by being brave enough to show up as we are. And this building doesn't require a massive following. It starts in the DMs, in the Zoom calls, in the group chats, in your own journal. It starts with how you talk to yourself when no one is watching. Because culture is not something out there. It's something in here, in your thoughts, your words, your patterns. And when we begin to take responsibility for our internal culture, our outer contributions become that much more powerful. This is the heart of digital stewardship. It's no longer enough to just avoid toxicity, we must actively create vitality. It's no longer enough to critique platforms, we must embody presence. It's no longer enough to consume mindfully, I must also contribute meaningfully. Contribution can take many forms. Maybe it's mentoring someone with less access. Maybe it's sharing your story with honesty. Maybe it's creating tools, art, or communities that offer value without strings attached. Maybe it's simply living in such a way that others feel more grounded in your presence. All of this matters. All of this adds up. All of this helps us reclaim the internet as a sacred space, not just for data, but for humanity. And in reclaiming the digital space, we also reclaim our inner space. Because how we engage with the world mirrors how we relate to ourselves. When we speak harshly to others, it often reflects inner harshness. When we rush to respond, it often reflects inner restlessness. When we compulsively scroll, it often reflects a fear of stillness. But when we learn to meet ourselves with grace, slowness, and truth, everything changes. Our digital habits soften. Our conversations deepen. Our creations flourish. This is the paradox. The most profound way to change the world is often to come home to yourself. To sit with your breath. To tell yourself the truth. To forgive the past. To soften your heart. To create from wholeness. To love without armor. And in doing so, you become a mirror for others. Not to copy but to remember who they are. You become a lighthouse. A quiet signal that it's safe to be human here. This, more than any strategy or system, is what the digital world needs now. More humans being human. Not perfect. Not polished. Just present. So, what does it truly mean to thrive in the digital age? It means reclaiming the parts of ourselves we lost to speed, performance, and perfection. It means remembering that we are not here to automate our humanity, we are here to honor it. To thrive is to live awake. To move with intention. To speak with care. To rest without shame. To create without fear. To love without performance. To remember what matters. It is not about abandoning technology but about dancing with it consciously. Using it to amplify our voice, not override our intuition. To connect hearts, not collect metrics. To create from depth, not from dopamine. Thriving means slowing down until you can feel your own rhythm again. Listening until you recognize the sound of your soul. Choosing what is real over what is urgent. Trusting presence more than productivity. Allowing beauty to emerge, not by force, but by being available to it. It's understanding that you are not a brand, you are a being. You are not here to keep you are here to tune in. You are not here to fit in, you are here to belong to yourself. And when you Dao Hen, you belong fully to your body, your values, your truth, you begin to belong everywhere. Because you are no longer seeking approval, you are living in integrity. This is the quiet revolution. Not on stages, Not in trending feeds, but in the choices you make when no one is watching. In the breath you take before reacting. In the boundary you hold with grace. In the story you refuse to believe anymore. In the love you offer without needing it to be returned. These are the moments that shape a life. These are the threads that weave a legacy. Not one of fame or virality, but one of presence, peace, and truth. So wherever you are right now, reading these words, pause. Breathe. Notice. Notice what feels true in your body. Notice what's asking to be released. Notice what's ready to begin. You don't have to become someone else to live well in this world. You only have to become more yourself. And from that place, rooted, clear, and alive, you can meet this age of noise with stillness. You can meet this age of speed with depth. You can meet this age of disconnection with embodied, wholehearted presence. You can thrive. Right here. Right now. Exactly as you are. Welcome home.